Hey, Dr. Dan here. Today we're going to set up Unity with the Firebase authentication and database, real-time database backend. Um, so let's get started. The very first thing you want to do, make sure, of course, you have Unity, the latest version, installed. You can get that from their website, and you can get the community version of that. Um, and once you have that installed, the very next thing we're going to do is set up a Firebase account. So you can do that with your email. Firebase is maintained by Google. So you can just go to firebase.google.com to get started. Once you have an account, it's free. You want to go to your console and add a new project. So we are going to call this one Unity, and we'll create. What it's going to do at this point is spin up a whole bunch of services for you, including analytics, database, authentication, messaging, all kinds of stuff that's useful. We are only going to take advantage of the real-time database and user authentication today, and we're going to do so with the Unity game engine. Alright, project's ready. So the first thing to do is, in general, to go to the docs and look at their overview here, and you can see they have a nice get started for Unity section. Over here you can see for any particular thing like the real-time database, we can also go down to Unity and see the get started section. Alright, so I'm going to go back, get started for Unity. It tells you all the things you can do, and the first thing we want to do is download the SDK. So the SDK for Unity is going to be a bunch of Unity packages. The Unity packages are going to manage things like Firebase database communication or authentication, and you'll have to import those packages. So you can see that's spinning right there. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that because I already have it downloaded. And if we scroll down, you can see they have a nice sample game we can pull from GitHub. We're going to ignore that because I don't want to bloat our project up with a bunch of code for a full-fledged game. I just want basic functionality. Alright, so at the point where it says add the SDK to your app, you can see that they provide some quick start samples. So let's go to those. And they have a nice GitHub repo. To get that repo, we can open in desktop, or we could just grab that URL, fire up a Node.js command prompt or Git command prompt. Oops. Right. I'll go ahead and use a Node.js one just because I like my Node command better. Got the opacity just right on it. So let me see if I already have this at my root directory. I think I do. Let's see. We have... No, we don't. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull it. Git clone and just paste that URL in there. And we'll go grab those. Now if I hit ls again, you can see we have quick start Unity right there. Alright, so that's just at our root directory level. So now let's open up a Unity project. And let's go ahead and start with authentication. Just see how the code works. And then we'll go to database, see how that code works and how to set it up. And then we will pull out the code we don't need, simplify things a bit, and get a working prototype up and running. Alright, so I'm going to open their quick start sample that was cloned to my root directories. Let's go to there. Users, me, and we have quick start Unity, authentication, test app. Oops. Alright, let's select that folder. It's warning me. We are 0.4 behind. That's fine. Let that build. So over here on the Firebase side, this is our actual project. What we're going to need is a Google services JSON, and to do that we're going to need to paste our app name in there, something of the format com.yourappname.android. You'll notice that I clicked on Android instead of web or iOS. Android's going to work for both desktop applications and Android builds. Haven't tested anything on iOS. If you're developing using the Ionic framework or Angular framework, or just you want a real-time database or authentication in your web build, you would click on this one, and what it's going to do there is give you a nice little JavaScript with Firebase initialization with a config variable to configure. But we want to do it this way, so we need our app name. So where do we find that? Well, we've got a bunch of errors. So first thing to do, it's telling us that Firebase could not be found. So we need to go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and what we're going to do is go to our downloads, and you'll see that I have this Firebase Unity SDK. That was the thing we downloaded right here. Okay, and so you want to unzip that or extract that, and then in Unity open it up as importing an asset, and inside that asset you'll see we have things like authentication. So let's go ahead and grab that. It's going to tell me all the stuff that I'm getting. We want it all. Alright, so let's make those errors go away. Okay, we're all good now. Bring this back down a bit. And you'll see we've gotten a couple of things here, including some Google Play services, some plugins, and a test app folder. In the test app folder there's a scene called main. So I'm going to load that up, and you'll see what they basically have is just an empty object called a UI handler. It's got one script on it, and that script is going to render a GUI as we start the game. So let's check out the script real quick. We are going to modify this heavily in order to get the functionality we want. But as you can see, we're just grabbing a reference to a skin. We have some variables for the login the ways we would want to log in. We have two references to Firebase auth objects, and those are the ways that we're going to create a user, log in that user, and then the way we'll pull information from the user is we'll use a dictionary object, because we're going to get key value pairs from Firebase, which is going to store everything as JSON objects. So if we scroll down, we can see we check some dependencies here, and then initialize Firebase is going to do the initialization work, and what we're going to do is use that reference here to the Firebase auth object to call a method to get a default instance, and then we'll from there track the states changed and the tokens changed. If we scroll down, we can see that the actual login work in the way that we're interested in is going to happen when we create user async, and that's going to return a task. And a task is something that we can return by having the Firebase Unity authentication package. Really, any of the Firebase packages use tasks, and you can think of these as kind of like coroutines. So right here, when we have auth.create So these are all the methods of auth we can look at right here. By just typing dot after that, we can sign in anonymously, sign in with credentials. We can create a user with email and password. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to feed in this email and password field, variable, and then we'll continue with a task that's going to handle the login information that we're going to display to the screen. Right. Update works the same way. Sign in. Again, we have auth.sign in with user async, right? And we're returning a task here. All right. So down, if we scroll even further down, just to show you why we're going to be rendering to, how we're going to be rendering to a GUI, down here we have a scrollable GUI layout, and we're going to put our log text in there. So anytime we log something, they have a method in here that fills this log text with the things that we would normally log to the console. But since we might want to test on an external device, we're going to log that as well to the GUI layout. The method that does that is up here, I believe. Right here. So anytime we're logging with debug, we're adding to this log text here and updating it. Scroll back down. All right, so our on GUI here is just going to let's see where the actual on GUI is. It's just going to listen for changes to the database information and then update the GUI. All right, and it's going to provide our buttons by having a reference to this GUI skin, which has all the components here. All right, so we need to do couple more things on the Firebase side to have this actually work. So first of all, we need this com name. Let's go get that. So that's going to be in our project settings, player settings. Over here we have, let me pull that so it's visible. We have a name for a bundle identifier. So let's just delete that, and let's call it com Daniel and PTN Unity. That's Unity test. How about that? And just to make sure we get it right, I will copy it right from there. Over here, we can provide that as the name now. Oh, and let's make sure we save this this new setting. Okay, save the scene and pull this back over. All right, we've got that name, Unity auth. Well, we'll eventually make this a database too. Don't need a SHA key, so we're going to register the app, and then we're going to download this Google Services JSON. There it is right there. So you'll notice I already have one. If I go to my downloads, just to make sure we don't get confused, I'll delete this one, which was the one I've previously did to test all this out, and rename this so that it has the name that it would have if you just downloaded it right away. Alright, so we've got that. We're just going to continue now, and we're going to finish. We don't need to worry about the Gradle settings. Over in authentication now, we need to enable a sign-in method. So you see I went over in the tabs there. We have email and passwords. We're going to enable that, save it. And we could also enable anonymous sign-in, since that's part of the functionality of the code for now. We'll change that in a little bit, and that's it. Alright, so now we can go to users and see that we have no users for the project. Over in Unity, we need to pull in that Google JSON to the root level of our assets. Right there. And our assets folder should now show it. That's fine. So now this Google JSON, we can take a look at it, has similar information that we would have with a web or iOS build. It just has a key, an API key, and some additional information about the app. The project ID, the Firebase URL to this particular Unity app project named Unity database, whatever. Okay, so got that. We are ready to test things out. So let's go ahead and see if anything's working in the editor. I doubt it. Yeah, that's probably what I expected. So we need actually to go ahead and build this. So let's build and run. And that's fine. Okay. So there's our game. Not very pretty. About that one. It just says testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in case you were wondering. And let's give so let's create a user. So over here is the logging I was telling you about. You can see everything we did right there. And I can't. So now it's still got that information. Let's go ahead and sign in with the email. Sign in complete. Cool. Okay. So we've set up Firebase. Let's go ahead and look at our users now. So over here in our project, you will see that, we need to refresh. You will see that we now have this d.d.com user and a user ID. So authentication works. Okay. Let's very quickly do the same thing for database. We already have the Google Services JSON there. Now I'm going to set up a database. So I click over in database. Let me close this down. And I want a real-time database. So let's get started. And let's go ahead and start in test mode so that anyone can read and write. We'll lock that down to only authenticated users in just a second. So here's our database. It's warning us our rules are public. That's fine. This is where we change our rules. Right now we have no data in that database. So in Unity, I'm going to go ahead and save this project and then open a new project. And this project is going to be so we're in Quick Start Unity. We're going to open the database, Quick Start, and we just need to open the test app folder. And we're going to run through the same basic process real quick. All we have to do at this point is rename our database app to have the same name as the authentication app just had, so that this project is then linked to the database, and then we'll use the same Google Services JSON to hook this database into our Firebase database. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Alright, so it's warning me that we don't have the database, so we need to go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and we need to go to our Firebase SDK. And this time we're going to import the database Unity package. That's the module of interest. Grab everything. We are also going to need that same Google Services JSON for this to work. So I'm going to just grab that and drop it into assets whenever Unity stops spinning. Okay, let's grab that and drop it in. So it's warning me I need to switch to .NET 2.0 subset, 2.0 instead of the 2.0 subset. So I'm going to go ahead and let it do that. We need that for the database. And we still haven't gotten the Google Services JSON in there. All right, there we go. So Unity knows what to do with that. Now, one last thing we have to do is go to our player settings. So I'll show you a different way to get there. You can go to build settings and then click on player settings and it'll pull that up as well. I'm going to change the name of this app to the same one as we had before. Okay, and then I'm going to go to test app and click on this main scene. So we have the same same setup. We have a UI handler script on an empty game object, except for that script with a reference to a GUI skin. And I won't dwell on that code because we're going to modify both that database code and the authentication code in the next video to have a simplified login to database in authenticated database, real-time database, quick start in the next video. So we're going to pull out a lot of code, add some code of our own, and simplify their code. So for now, let's just make sure it's working and see how it works. So the last thing I want to check is in my player settings. Let's make sure it did in fact switch over to the .NET 2.0. I think it did. Yep. All right, so that's fine. And then finally, close that down. We have a database ready. We have a link to that database. Oh, there's one thing in the sample code for this quick start we do need to change. So you'll notice my database has a URL right there. Let's just copy that URL, and you'll notice that the setup for this is very similar. We're going to have a string for log text, email, and score. Email and score is what actually gets logged into the database. And the method of storing is an array list that they're going to store strings in. Here we're checking dependencies again, and then initializing Firebase. We need to set the URL here to our own database and save it. And that's just so that in the app we can run this database inside of the editor. So we don't actually have to build it the way we built the authentication. Okay, so the way this database works is we have this listener, and the listener listens for updates in the database right here. When it gets an update, it adds to the leaderboard, basically. There's a lot more to it. It does some sorting, some deleting, but that's all we need to know for now. So let's save that. Let's go back to our scene and save the scene and run it. Okay. Not real pretty. We may have to build and run this as well. But it is working in the editor, so let's go ahead and build. Oops. Let's build and run. You can see it in action. Okay. Let's make that a bit smaller. Oops, should have done display right. That's okay. Alright, so we can add an email. It doesn't actually care about the format. Dad. And let's enter a score. There we go. We have 1 for Dad. You know what? Stick with the theme. Let's do Mom. Mom got 2. She's a little better. 20. Ooh, okay. Mom got 20. Me. I'm not better than Mom, but I'm better than Dad. Alright. And 400. And then let's put in 5 or 50 for F. Alright, so I just want 5 scores in there. You can see over here in the same way I'm logging everything that happens with the database. And we can go offline or go online here as well. Over on the database side, you will see if we refresh that we now have, oh, I didn't even need to refresh. We now have these leaders and they have all that information there. Alright, so in the next video, we've now shown how to get both the quick start versions, quick start get repos for Firebase Unity up and running. For database and authentication, the process is very similar for the rest of these services that Firebase provides. In the next video, we are going to set up a simplified version of this, and so we are going to strip out all this on GUI code so it resembles more the code you would have in your standard Unity game, and we're going to combine the functionality. So we'll simplify the code in both the quick starts, and then we'll combine the functionality so that we have a login to database in a single app. And what we're going to do is we're going to have only one form of authentication, so we'll disable that, and then in our database we'll change our rules so that they are like this, so that they are default and only authenticated users can mess around in our database. So we will change our rules to look like that, and in that way nobody can modify our database unless they've gone through the email authentication we'll set up. Once they've done that, they can modify our database, and we'll see real-time updates in Unity. That's all for now. I hope that was helpful, just getting you started using a real-time database and Firebase in conjunction with Unity. And shout out to the people who put together these quick starts in GitHub, as they are super helpful. The code contains way more functionality than we need, so in the next video we're going to simplify it a bit. Thank you very much for listening.